Hello, beautiful people. And you might be thinking I'm not beautiful, but the answer to that not question is you are beautiful. What? Welcome to Day 9 Daily number 549, where we learn to be a better gamer. I am blessed today as I am wearing a panda hat, similar to yesterday's daily. But it's important to note why I'm wearing said panda hat, suit, hood. In today's daily, we're doing an extension of yesterday's daily. Yesterday, we looked at BeastyQT performing a bio plus widow mine composition in Heart of the Swarm. We're getting a chance to see how that functions. And in yesterday's daily, we looked at it primarily against widow mine, or against widow mines. We looked at it primarily against mutalisks. Ling Muta versus Marine Marauder Medivac Mine. We got the chance to see that unfold yesterday in terms of how it opened, how the attack structure works, how our armies get positioned with these widow mines, and also how the a lot of how it related to the fundamental timings of the matchup. In this daily, we're going to be doing a little bit more of that, seeing the Widow Mine, Marine Marauder Medivac mixture, going up against ling+infestor, and we're going to do the same little analysis. We're going to see, dink, how on earth this functions in the early game as an opening. We're going to see how the positioning of our Widow Mine and army works throughout the game. But what's especially cool here is we're going to see that the emergency thrusters that I am not calling Ignite Afterburners, you know, the medivac speed boost thing, we're going to see how that really steps into play in the mid and late game if our opponent does not have any air to combat it. And we'll also get the chance to see how the Widow Mine is a little bit more of a comeback mechanic. Now, there's one thing I want to note. These games, the game that I'm going to be doing today, and of course yesterday's game, were cast by Husky StarCraft. Yes, so if you want to see the full cast of the series, head on over to youtube.com/Husky StarCraft to check those out. I think that's it. I think I've done the announcement introduction for the day. I have to open up the definitive graph of Terran vs. Zerg, how it works uncontested in all the world. And now what I want to do is note that after today's daily, I will be casting the Week 4 match between Xigua and Palantir in the After Hours Gaming League. Oh, yes. For any of you who do not know, the After Hours Gaming League is a for-fun recreational corporate league whereby individuals from many corporations around the world engage in combat with one another for charity and glory. The winner of the AHGL donates $5,000 to the charity of their choosing, and it's a lot of fun. And that's it. That's all there is to really say about the AHGL. Think of it like corporate softball, except instead of having, you know, Microsoft go play against Epic Systems in a baseball field, they play on a StarCraft field. And of course, if you want to know more about the format and how it works, just stay here, and after the show, you'll see it. Is there anything else to note in the whole wide world other than that I have some food here? Oh god, in these breaks. All the chicken salads. I want to once again talk a little bit about the Terran vs. Zerg matchup. If you have not seen yesterday's daily, I highly encourage you to take a glance at the start as we looked at this graph. Oh god, I need my red. This graph is a useful tool for us to think about the Terran versus Zerg matchup. Here's the time length of the game down here at the bottom. In terms of minutes, here's the amount of pressure that the Terran is applying over time. And these different color graphs, this is the standard Turtle Terran, this is a more aggressive style. We'll end up looking at this more in depth as the games go on, but the important thing to emphasize is that whether you want to do an attack early, as with a Pult style, or a big attack later, as with a Bomber Turtle Terran style, they end up always striking in the midst of some vulnerable spot in the Zerg play. So the early attacks hit a Zerg as he's been building drones and not units. The later attacks try to strike the Zerg player when he has Infestor tech but no Hive tech. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that. Let us now journey into part 1 where we're going to be looking at DOS openings. So we have this Chinese player by the name of Xigua, but we will call him Watermelon because I don't know if I'm pronouncing it properly. And down in the bottom left we have BeastyQT. And they are playing on the map that I literally cannot see as anything other than the Diablo 3 map, given the tile set. But I think this is called Star Station, which is totally boring. It's out in space and it's a station, so it's Star Station. I meant to just go, but a surprising amount of saliva reached the tip of my tongue when I did that. And I now have a smattering of it all over the keyboard. Excellent. So far this daily I think is going very well. Successful. Xigua, thank you very much for the pronunciation guide, dear chat. Alright. So, BeastyQT is going to spawn down in the bottom left-hand corner here. This map is a very weird-looking map for the vertical positions. It plays out drastically differently. We have this natural expansion, and there's actually 3 big attack paths. Obviously, this one leading up to our opponent. As we come back to our natural, we see that there is a second attack path right up through this low ground area. And of course, as we come back to the natural yet again, there's the 3rd attack path that comes right up here to the Xel'Naga Watchtower. What makes this an especially unusual map for thinking from the Terran perspective at the very least is that we're obviously going to take this natural. What is the most common place for us to take our next base? It would be this one, this forward expansion. This is a useful spot to take because if we have this expansion, we don't need to worry about this bit of air anymore. Not nearly as much. If we're on 2 base, Muta+ling can easily swing in from this angle along this ridge in our base. But if we've taken this base, we can have Marines positioned there, and we can just kind of go turret, 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 and we feel pretty comfortable from this flank. Also, by securing this expansion, it's very easy to secure this Xel'Naga Watchtower, which further helps deal with any air threats that should be getting thrown at us along these ends. So I really do like this quite a bit, taking this expansion as our 3rd. We always want to think about our 3rd expansion when we look at a map. If you don't think about 3rd bases when you look at a new map, then you're doing it wrong. That's kind of one of those interesting things that finally now is starting to come back. Because in Wings of Liberty, we all played on the same 8 maps for like 5 years. And some of you are saying, "Oh, this game's 3 years old." Listen, I love exaggerating. Let me just say that we played on the same 8 maps for like a billion, badrillion, gorillion, Brazilian years. So it's really cool in Heart of the Swarm to see these new maps pop up. And in every matchup, in every circumstance, you should say, where is my most expected to take 3rd? And that will define your strategy throughout. So the fact that we're taking this 3rd base means that we'll have a lot of close push distances going from here all the way up to here is a very reasonable method of attack. And of course, pushing up through here. This seems like a very reasonable 4th base. And as a result, I personally would like a little bit more of tank play or mech play because it's such a clear move here and then up to there and then all the way through here. However, as we expand to this 3rd, then we would have a lot more of an open right flank, and this is just super stupidly wide open. So in this regard, I can see an argument for bio mine play coming in because we have this whole space to cover and this attack path to cover and this left attack path to cover. Just some things to consider if you're going for biomine, then you are basically saying, I want to be able to attack these locations more easily. If you're going for tank or mech base play, you're saying I'm expanding here and I want to be doing this attack more easily. Isn't that great? Isn't that cool? Isn't it nifty how just by noting what our 3rd base is and seeing where our opponent's base is, we can now get a really clear sense of what sort of strat we should go for. And most significantly of all, everything I just said only applies to the vertical positions. Strategies. Oh, strategy development. What if we were in cross-map positions? Then I would 100% favor biomine and not mech, just due to these long distances. And it looks like we're having all them chats. BeastyQT doing the ever classic, well, let's either remove whomever is lagging or let's reboot. And of course, the person who is lagging is gone. Now, I did a little bit of that map analysis. I'd consider that the sort of pre-game analysis. Were you BeastyQT, you would have pre-considered these sorts of things, but of course, it's much easier for me to analyze the map if I can show you a map. So now that we're at the 2-minute mark, let's speed things up a bit and start examining the specific opening from BeastyQT. And I do have my sound and rock and music going. As is expected, the good old command center wall off with the barracks is pretty common. This is increasingly becoming the thing to do in this matchup. Bam! Oh yes. By the way, just want to make sure with everyone that the sound levels are okay. For some reason, it feels quiet to me. I'm gonna bring it up to 14% because I'm brave and I'm bold. Also, what's very common in Wings of Liberty right now is to do this refinery at like a little bit after 16, 17, 18-ish. This allows us to get up our factory quite quickly, to get the Hellions up and all that sort of goodness. In yesterday's daily, we saw an alternative opening where BeastyQT constructed an early second barracks to get defense up. We'll see a little bit of why that's useful in this game. Until then, I'm going to remove myself from the screen, and then I'm going to remove my contact. I'm just having an eye issue. It's all itchy. It was itchy yesterday. It's itchy today. Time to do it with half an eyeball for at least a little bit of the show. So I'm going to right away note a critical thing that will didn't used to be a big timing to note, but now is like a super significant timing to note. So what we're seeing BeastyQT examine is, aha, a hatch is almost done, a pool has just wrapped up, and I see a gas geyser already mining. Note that you can actually click on the gas geyser. So when you're doing your scouting, you see this. Anytime you see a hatch that's gonna finish around 4 minutes, that is a early expand hatch first build. If the hatch is like halfway done or something along those lines or getting started, you know that there was a pool first. So we come in here, you can actually click on the gas and see, oh, it's about 100 gas mined. If you're not a gas clicking kind of guy, then become that. Click on the gas. Just see how much gas he's mined. This is a key timing where we're going to say, ah, there is a Zergling attack he can do at 5 minutes and 45 seconds. Sometimes around 5:30. And then we can see a wiggly pool. So SCV wandered up, saw the wiggly pool. It's wiggling because of the metabolic boost. Just going to go ahead and note that right away. Why do I note that? Because BeastyQT is going to do the ever-classic maneuver, getting himself a factory, building not just one marine, but dos marinos, and then pulling back to get his reactor up. Such a common opening, getting the orbital command up, getting the third command center up, so common. Most players who want to be going for a really fast third command center will do this exact opening. Delay this refinery a bit. Just go for one refinery and then straight up trade up. So, here's a little swaparoo. Joink. Joink. I will now note all the things. Here comes all the things. Is the sound really soft? By the way, for some reason, there has just been a ridiculous variance on the in-game sound levels for StarCraft 2. On some of the maps, it is softer and louder. I've been trying to determine this pattern for ages and ages and ages. I don't know. So I'm cranking it up just a pinch, just a pinch. Juste un peu. I want to stop here and just take a look at the current mission control status of BeastyQT's build. Because in Heart of the Swarm, all the new Zerg stuff is layer tech and on, I think that there is a patch coming up that there's some suggested changes like bringing the Overlord speed to hatchery tech, so that way you can scout your opponents a little bit better. I'm going to ignore that because I don't actually know if that's coming in or not, but even if it does, it doesn't change the attacks, right? It doesn't change the attacks of what the Zerg can do, so that way if you're seeing this on the archive later, it's still relevant. In terms of the attacks, no new attacks for about the first 9-10 minutes of the game. Nothing new. You can't get speed hydras or speed mutas or vipers or swarm hosts before that time. So all the usual attack timings are still here. This attack timing, the 5:45 to 6 minute Zergling swing in, popularized by Startail Life, because the speed Zerglings strike right before the Hellions pop out, and then this happens. So this is a bit of an issue that anyone doing this build will do, whether it's Wings of Liberty or Heart of the Swarm. This Zergling run-in will happen with high probability if we have scouted this refinery and we saw the 100 gas. So, I mean, I made a little big deal about that early on. A little big deal, I would say that. I made a big deal about that early on, checking this gas, and this is why. Just plain and simple. Other than this, I just want to showcase this Widow Mine thing popping up. We're seeing some difficulty keeping the bunker alive because it only has 2 Marines. But quite naturally, we can lift up these supply depots. These mines function quite well in terms of defense, as long as we have some reinforcing units. Notice how bad they get otherwise. Notice how bad it is if a couple Zerglings get into the base. But that's okay. BeastyQT is continuing to make Widow Mines. So far, so good. And there are the mines being burrowed defensively. Now I'm going to come back a little bit to the straight BeastyQT cam. And what have we accomplished thus far in the daily? We've seen a couple of vulnerabilities. We've seen kind of how the Widow Mines work defensively. And now we're actually seeing that we are very comfortably defended. This is a pretty good looking defense. Also, with this stim coming up and these extra 2 barracks, what are we gearing up to do? We're gearing up to do some sort of attack that will strike right along in this period. We would like to engage in some sort of attack. It won't quite be at the 9-minute mark or the 9:10. It'll probably be closer to the 11:12, but it's still during the period when Zerg is generally powering. I will once again note that if you're looking for an alternative opening to lead into Widow Mine bio, definitely check out the previous daily 548, where I had just taken a nap and had a nice relaxing daily, and I actually enjoyed that. So I did it again today. I took a nap right before the daily. I woke up at 6:45. And I feel good. I also have a little bit of a runny nose, so forgive the sniffles. Oh, so great. Feeling oh so good. So usual 3 orbital command setup. Note that the Widow Mines are not great in terms of scouting. They're very easy to backfire. It's not like the Hellion where we can advance all the way the hell up here and then run all the way the hell back. We can't do that. So BeastyQT is needing to send out a couple extra SCVs. Do a little bit more poking and prodding. Seeing what's up. Engineering bay, a little bit delayed. We have not yet built a starport. We're just continuing to flood out Widow Mines right at the start, wall ourselves off. Quite difficult to scout when that early lingage comes in, but we do have the benefit of these types of slight defensive setups. Other than that, pretty good looking setup. Pretty good looking base setup. Again, we can't quite do like the 9-minute timing attack. Why? Because Ling's got in our base and these barracks were delayed. And we even got this orbital command up. But we're still hoping to do some pressure around 12. BeastyQT's doing something a little interesting. He's delaying the starport until he has all these bio components up. And I like this a lot. I think this is just damn cool. We focus on this bio force, we focus on this Widow Mine force, so that way When we do push out, we have a really beastly army and enough units to be able to defend this. So this will end up bleeding a little bit more into, where is it? Into something in this range. Now notice that this is still a vulnerability. This is still a period where the Zerg is generally shooting for infestors but no hive tech. It's also generally when Zerg has wrapped up his powering, so that's still fine. It's just important that we know why these attacks are working. Haha. So this is a common swap that we see in Wings of Liberty, building the starport on the old reactor that was on the factory, and then just returning and then just making this factory scout or having it build tanks. But we re-reactor it in BeastyQT's position. This is a much more defensive-looking Widow Mine type force. It was a lot more offensive in the previous daily. I want to rewind back to that, because again we're seeing that information is necessary. BeastyQT just needs to get some data. It would be lovely to see a third base. We're nearly certain we'll see a third base. See, Overseer already pre-built, more common in Heart of the Swarm. BeastyQT is just pre-building the missile turrets. Why? Because right around 9 minutes is when that threat actually is possible, physically. And in the unit station we do have 7 Marines. Yes! So speeding things right along, we see that the Mutalisks pop up right as anticipated. And we talked a little bit about this in yesterday's daily too, that given these timings, having a Widow Mine here and here makes a lot of sense. Having a Widow Mine here and here and here does not make as much sense. If we're at the 10-minute mark, we should have a mine back here and 1 mine over here. And if these forward mines see a big old push coming up, we can easily reposition our anti-air mines. But, you know, a little bit of difficulty ends up popping in as BeastyQT. Again, the lateness of these 2 barracks makes it really difficult to deal with these sort of attacks, but the instant that the mines end up popping into things, our lives become a lot easier. So I'm going to go ahead and stop at 11 minutes and 11 seconds and recap what we've seen. In part 1, we've essentially analyzed the map and then looked at the basic opening, talking a little bit about the timings, talking a little bit about what some of the goals of this build should be, about these generally expected 10-minute timing pushes to exploit the fact that the Zerg is vulnerable. So we've kind of done a lot of goal-based things and seen some of the literal I don't want to say mechanics, like the literal architecture of the build, literal structure of this opening. And as we're wrapping up part 1, we're seeing that things are not quite going according to plan. Obviously, we don't want Mutalisks coming into our base and killing us off. In the previous daily, we got to see an attack by BeastyQT. Long before this time, we got to see an attack a full minute before this time do a lot of damage to the Zerg opponent. But now here we're in this weird spot. So when we come back to part 2, we're going to see how this composition of buildings that we have, a lot of Marines, some Marauders, and a lot of Widow Mines, we're going to see how we can use these to get ourselves back into the game. Because very clearly at this point, in the Units Lost tab, in this tab, we're seeing we've lost 14 workers, we've taken Zergling damage, we've taken Mutalisk damage, we're behind 25 food. How do we come back? We'll look at that in part 2. See you then. See you then.